If you want people to respect you, there is one habit you must eliminate before anything else. Stop being too friendly. This does not mean becoming cold, arrogant, or unkind. It means understanding that excessive friendliness often has nothing to do with kindness. More often than people realize, it is driven by the fear of being disliked. The moment your happiness depends on everyone approving of you, you begin making decisions that have nothing to do with wisdom and everything to do with avoiding rejection. You smile when you disagree. You accept requests you want to refuse. You laugh at jokes you do not find funny. You remain available even when you are exhausted. Little by little, your personality stops reflecting who you are and starts reflecting what other people expect from you. This is where respect quietly begins to disappear. Human nature operates on a principle that many people refuse to accept. People appreciate kindness, but they rarely respect desperation. When someone notices that you constantly need to be liked, they unconsciously realize they possess influence over your behavior. They understand that a little approval can make you work harder for them, while a little distance can make you chase them. Without saying a single word, you have already surrendered your strongest position, Oz, because your emotions are no longer under your control. You are allowing someone else's opinion to determine your choices. The first step to stopping this cycle is recognizing that excessive friendliness often comes from emotional dependence, not genuine generosity. Observe the people who are too friendly with everyone they meet. They apologize even when nothing is their fault. They agree with opinions they secretly reject. They volunteer for responsibilities nobody else wants, simply because saying no feels uncomfortable. They over-explain every decision because they fear being misunderstood. They give more time, more energy, and more patience than they can realistically afford. At first, others may praise them for being nice, but over time, something changes. Their kindness stops being appreciated and starts being expected. People no longer ask whether they are willing to help. They simply assume they will. This is how excessive friendliness slowly transforms into invisible servitude. What began as kindness becomes obligation because you trained people to believe your boundaries did not matter. The uncomfortable truth is that people learn how to treat you by watching what you tolerate. If you constantly sacrifice your own priorities to keep others comfortable, they eventually conclude that your priorities are not important. If you always make yourself available, your availability loses its value. If you never disagree, your agreement loses its meaning. Familiarity replaces appreciation, and appreciation slowly turns into entitlement. This is why people who are too friendly often feel unappreciated. They believe they have given everything, yet they receive very little in return. The problem is not that they were kind. The problem is that they gave away their time, attention, and emotional energy without teaching others that these things had value. One of the biggest mistakes people make is confusing friendliness with self-respect. They believe protecting their boundaries will make them selfish. In reality, the opposite is true. Healthy boundaries allow kindness to remain genuine because every act of generosity becomes a choice instead of an obligation. Imagine two people offering the same favor. One does it because they fear disappointing you. The other does it because they genuinely want to help after carefully choosing to do so. The action looks identical, but the psychology behind it is completely different. People eventually sense that difference. Genuine kindness carries confidence. Desperate friendliness carries anxiety. One earns respect, while the other quietly invites exploitation. Notice how people react when someone begins valuing their own time. At first, there may be resistance. Those who benefited from unlimited access suddenly feel uncomfortable because the rules have changed. They may accuse you of becoming distant or different, but what they are really noticing is that your boundaries have become visible. For the first time, your attention requires consideration instead of assumption. This is not cruelty, it is balance. The people who genuinely respect you will adapt because they value the relationship itself. Those who disappear were often benefiting more from your endless availability than from your company. Another reason you must stop being too friendly is that excessive friendliness hides your true character. When you constantly adjust yourself to please everyone, nobody actually knows who you are. They only know the version of you that avoids conflict. They never hear your honest opinions. They never see your real standards. They never discover your genuine convictions because those qualities remain buried beneath endless agreement. Ironically, trying to make everyone like you prevents anyone from truly respecting you. Respect grows when people know where you stand, even if they do not agree with every decision you make. The strongest individuals are not remembered because they pleased everyone. They are remembered because they treated people with dignity while refusing to abandon their principles. They could be warm without becoming available to everyone. They could be generous without allowing themselves to be used. They understood that kindness without boundaries eventually loses its meaning because it no longer comes from strength, it comes from fear. Real confidence allows you to care about people without becoming controlled by their opinions. It allows you to say no without guilt, disagree without hostility, and walk away without needing universal approval. When you stop being too friendly, something remarkable begins to happen. People start paying closer attention to your words because you no longer speak merely to satisfy them. They value your time because it is no longer endlessly available. They recognize your kindness because it is intentional rather than automatic. Most importantly, you begin respecting yourself, and that inner change quietly transforms the way everyone else responds to you. Because the moment your self-respect becomes more important than being liked, excessive friendliness disappears, and genuine respect begins to take its place. One of the biggest reasons you must stop being too friendly is that kindness without boundaries slowly teaches people to disrespect you. Most people never intend for this to happen. They believe that if they are always helpful, always available, and always agreeable, others will naturally appreciate them. But human psychology does not work that way. People value what has limits. They respect what cannot be accessed whenever they want. The moment you become available for everyone at every moment, your presence stops feeling valuable and starts feeling ordinary. This is why the second rule is not to stop being kind. It is to stop giving your kindness without boundaries. A boundary does not destroy relationships. It protects them by teaching people how to treat you. Think about how many people automatically say yes before they even think. A friend asks for a favor, and they immediately agree, even if it ruins their own schedule. A coworker gives them extra work, and they accept it to avoid looking selfish. Family members demand their time, and they sacrifice their own priorities because guilt feels unbearable. At first, everyone praises them for being dependable, but over time, something changes. The favors stop feeling like gifts and begin feeling like expectations. Nobody asks whether they are willing anymore because everyone assumes the answer will always be yes. This is exactly how being too friendly quietly lowers your value. The more predictable your generosity becomes, the less people recognize the sacrifice behind it. Human beings naturally adapt to what they receive consistently. Imagine someone who gives expensive gifts every week. In the beginning, people feel grateful. Months later, they begin expecting it. If one week the gift does not arrive, disappointment replaces appreciation. The gift did not become less valuable. It simply became too available. The same thing happens with your time, your attention, your emotional support, and your willingness to help. When you give these things without limits, people stop recognizing them as valuable because they no longer require effort to receive. Excessive friendliness creates this invisible trap. You believe you are earning appreciation, while in reality, you are teaching people to expect unlimited access to your energy. This is why people who are too friendly often feel exhausted. They spend so much time solving everyone else's problems that they forget to solve their own. They answer every call, respond to every request, and make themselves available for every inconvenience. Eventually, they begin wondering why nobody seems equally willing to help them. The answer is painful but important. They trained others to receive from them without ever requiring balance. Relationships become one-sided because they were built on unlimited giving instead of mutual respect. Kindness becomes unhealthy the moment it consistently ignores your own well-being. There is another psychological reason boundaries create respect. They communicate self-worth without needing words. Every time you politely decline something that violates your priorities, you send a powerful message. You are telling people that your time has value, your energy has value, your attention has value. You are not rejecting them, you are protecting yourself. Strong people understand this difference. They know that saying no to one request often means saying yes to something more important. Weak boundaries, on the other hand, communicate something very different. They suggest that anyone can rearrange your life simply by asking. Once people recognize that pattern, many will continue taking advantage of it because there is no cost for doing so. Notice how the people who receive the most respect are rarely available all the time. They are present when it matters, but they are not endlessly accessible. They understand that constant availability reduces perceived value. This does not make them arrogant, it makes them intentional. When they agree to help, people know it is a conscious choice rather than an automatic habit. That difference completely changes how their kindness is received. Instead of expecting endless favors, people begin appreciating the ones they receive because they understand those favors require genuine consideration. One of the hardest lessons to accept is that setting boundaries will disappoint certain people. Those who benefited from your unlimited friendliness may accuse you of changing. They may call you selfish, distant, or difficult. But ask yourself an important question. Were they attracted to your character, or were they attracted to your inability to refuse them? People who genuinely care about you may need time to adjust, but they will eventually respect your boundaries because they respect you. Those who only valued your endless availability often disappear the moment limits appear. As painful as that feels, it reveals the true nature of those relationships. Stopping yourself from being too friendly also changes the way you see yourself. Instead of measuring your worth by how much you sacrifice for others, you begin measuring it by how honestly you live according to your values. You no longer feel guilty every time you protect your schedule. You no longer apologize for having priorities. You no longer believe that being respected requires constantly proving your usefulness. Your kindness becomes stronger because it is no longer driven by fear of rejection. It becomes a deliberate expression of character rather than an emotional obligation. The most respected people are not those who give everything to everyone. They are the ones who know exactly when to give, when to listen, when to help, and when to step back. They understand that kindness without limits eventually loses its meaning because people stop recognizing its value. But kindness protected by clear boundaries becomes something entirely different. It earns trust, preserves your peace, and teaches others that your presence is a privilege, not an entitlement, because the moment you stop giving your time, energy, and attention without limits, people stop taking your kindness for granted and begin respecting the value you bring into their lives. One of the clearest signs that you are being too friendly is your constant need to explain yourself. You explain why you said no. You explain why you arrived late. You explain why you cannot help. You explain why you changed your mind. You even explain your emotions in the hope that everyone will understand your intentions. At first, this seems polite and considerate, but beneath the surface, it sends a completely different message. It tells people that you are uncomfortable making decisions unless everyone approves of them. The more you feel obligated to justify every choice, the more power you quietly hand over to the people around you. That is why, if you truly want to stop being too friendly, you must stop believing that every decision requires an explanation. Respect grows when your actions consistently reflect your values, not when your words constantly defend them. Many people over-explain because they fear disappointing others. They worry that saying a simple no will make them appear selfish. They fear that refusing a request will damage a relationship. So instead of giving a clear answer, they offer a long story filled with reasons and excuses, hoping the other person will approve of their decision. But human psychology often interprets this differently. The longer you defend yourself, the more it appears that you are seeking permission rather than making a choice. Instead of strengthening your position, endless explanations make your confidence seem uncertain. People begin believing that if they pressure you long enough, you will eventually change your mind because your boundaries depend on their approval. Notice how people react when someone gives a calm, respectful, and brief answer. There is no anger, no guilt, and no unnecessary justification. They simply communicate their decision and move forward. That kind of behavior creates certainty. Even if others do not like the answer, they recognize that it comes from someone who respects their own time and priorities. Compare that to the person who keeps talking after making a decision. Every additional explanation becomes another opportunity for someone to challenge, negotiate, or manipulate. They begin searching for weaknesses in your reasoning instead of accepting your decision. Without realizing it, you have turned a simple conversation into a debate that never needed to exist. This is one of the hidden dangers of being too friendly. You believe you are keeping the peace, but you are actually inviting people to question your choices. Every unnecessary explanation suggests that your decision is still open for discussion. If someone senses uncertainty, they naturally push a little harder. They ask one more question. They make one more request. They appeal to your emotions one more time. Why? Because your behavior has taught them that persistence often changes your answer. You did not lose control because they were persuasive. You lost control because you made your boundaries sound negotiable. Silence, on the other hand, carries a different kind of strength. Silence is not about ignoring people or refusing to communicate. It is about resisting the urge to defend yourself when no defense is necessary. Strong individuals understand that not everyone needs to understand every decision they make. They know that living according to your principles sometimes means accepting that others will disagree. Trying to convince everyone is impossible, and the attempt usually weakens your position instead of strengthening it. The more comfortable you become with brief, confident communication, the less dependent you become on other people's approval. Think about how often overly friendly people apologize unnecessarily. They apologize for asking a question. They apologize for protecting their schedule. They apologize for expressing a different opinion. They even apologize for existing in situations where they have done absolutely nothing wrong. These constant apologies may appear harmless, but they slowly shape how others perceive you. They suggest that you are unsure of your own right to occupy space, express boundaries, or make independent decisions. Over time, people stop seeing your politeness as kindness and start seeing it as uncertainty. This is why excessive friendliness often leads to diminished respect instead of stronger relationships. The people who naturally command respect rarely waste words defending every action. They understand that consistency speaks louder than explanation. If your character is strong, people eventually judge you by your repeated actions rather than by your endless justifications. They know you are honest because you have been honest repeatedly. They know you are dependable because your actions have proven it. They know your values because your decisions consistently reflect them. None of that requires constant explanation. In fact, explaining too much often distracts people from the quiet confidence your actions could have communicated on their own. This does not mean becoming emotionally distant or refusing healthy communication. There are moments when explanation is necessary, especially in relationships built on trust and mutual respect. But there is a difference between communicating with sincerity and defending yourself out of fear. One comes from confidence. The other comes from the need to be accepted. If your first instinct after every decision is to make sure nobody feels uncomfortable, you are still allowing other people's emotions to control your behavior. That is exactly the habit you must leave behind if you want to stop being too friendly. As you begin speaking with greater clarity and fewer unnecessary words, something interesting happens. People stop expecting long justifications because they realize your decisions are thoughtful, not impulsive. They begin respecting your time because you no longer waste it defending obvious choices. They understand that when you speak, your words have purpose instead of insecurity. Most importantly, you begin trusting yourself enough to let your actions communicate what endless explanations never could. Because the moment you stop explaining every decision to earn acceptance, people stop seeing someone eager to please and start seeing someone whose quiet confidence naturally commands respect. One of the biggest mistakes people make when they are too friendly is giving everyone immediate access to their trust, time, attention, and personal life. They believe that being completely open from the very beginning will create stronger relationships. They share their struggles with people they barely know. They become emotionally invested after only a few conversations. They make themselves available whenever someone calls. They treat strangers with the same level of access that should be reserved for people who have proven their loyalty. At first, this feels like kindness, but in reality, it removes one of the most important principles of healthy relationships. People should earn access to you over time. If you truly want to stop being too friendly, you must stop giving away what should be gradually earned. Human psychology places greater value on things that require effort. This principle applies not only to money or success, but also to relationships. When something is available without any investment, people naturally appreciate it less. The same happens with your presence. If anyone can immediately have your attention, your trust, your emotional support, and your availability, those things begin to lose their perceived value. People stop seeing them as privileges and start treating them like guarantees. The problem is not your generosity. The problem is that you never required anyone to demonstrate that they deserved what you were giving so freely. Think about how often overly friendly people confuse quick familiarity with genuine connection. Someone shows them a little kindness, and they immediately begin sharing personal stories. Someone gives them attention for a few days, and they start treating that person like a lifelong friend. Someone compliments them, and they lower every emotional boundary they had. They assume that because the interaction feels comfortable, trust has already been earned. But comfort is not the same as character. Many people know how to create a good first impression. Far fewer know how to remain trustworthy over time. The wisest individuals understand this difference. They allow relationships to develop naturally instead of forcing closeness before it has been tested by time and consistent behavior. One of the reasons you must stop being too friendly is that excessive openness attracts the wrong kinds of people. There are individuals who actively look for those with weak boundaries because they know such people are easier to influence. They recognize the person who cannot say no, who trusts too quickly, and who always tries to see the best in everyone regardless of evidence. To them, excessive friendliness is not a virtue, it is an opportunity. They know they can ask for favors sooner, borrow more than they intend to return, seek emotional support without offering any in return, or slowly take advantage of someone who struggles to establish limits. None of this happens overnight. It begins with unlimited access that was given before trust was earned. Strategic individuals approach relationships differently. They are respectful from the beginning, but they do not confuse respect with instant intimacy. They understand that trust is built through repeated actions, not attractive words. Instead of asking, "Do I like this person?" they quietly ask a better question. Has this person consistently demonstrated honesty, reliability, and respect? That single change in thinking protects them from countless disappointments. It allows them to remain kind without becoming vulnerable to every charming personality that crosses their path. They know that true relationships grow stronger through patience, not speed. There is another reason selective access creates respect. It communicates that your time and emotional energy have value. When people realize they cannot instantly enter every part of your life, they begin understanding that your attention is something meaningful rather than automatic. This does not mean playing games or pretending to be mysterious. It simply means recognizing that your presence is valuable enough to protect. You would never hand the keys to your home to someone you met yesterday. Yet many people hand over something even more valuable: their trust, emotional dependence, and unlimited availability without asking whether the other person has earned it. That is not kindness. It is carelessness disguised as generosity. Notice how the healthiest relationships develop. They are not built on immediate closeness. They are built on consistency. Small moments of reliability slowly become confidence. Honest conversations slowly become trust. Mutual respect slowly becomes loyalty. Every meaningful connection requires time because time reveals what first impressions cannot. It exposes whether someone remains dependable when circumstances become difficult. It reveals whether their kindness is genuine or simply convenient. By allowing people to earn access gradually, you give yourself the opportunity to see who they truly are before giving them a permanent place in your life. People who are too friendly often fear this approach because they worry it will make them appear distant or unfriendly. But healthy boundaries do not push good people away. They attract them. Emotionally mature individuals appreciate relationships that grow naturally because they understand that trust has real value. The people who become frustrated by your boundaries are often the same people who benefited from your lack of them. That alone tells you everything you need to know. Anyone who respects you will also respect the pace at which you choose to build trust. As you begin protecting your time, your attention, and your emotional space, something remarkable happens. Your relationships become fewer, but they become stronger. You stop wasting energy on people who disappear the moment they stop receiving unlimited access. Instead, you invest in those who consistently prove through their actions that they deserve your confidence. Your kindness becomes more meaningful because it is intentional rather than automatic. Your trust becomes more valuable because it is earned rather than freely distributed. Most importantly, people begin recognizing that being part of your life is a privilege created through mutual respect, not something guaranteed by your inability to set limits, because the moment people must earn access to your time, trust, and attention, your kindness gains value, your boundaries gain respect, and you finally stop being too friendly at the expense of your own peace. One of the hardest things you will ever learn is that if you stop being too friendly, some people will become disappointed with you. At first, this feels uncomfortable because you have spent so much of your life believing that keeping everyone happy is your responsibility. You have learned to avoid conflict, to sacrifice your own comfort, and to say yes even when every part of you wants to say no. You convinced yourself that this was kindness, but the truth is far more uncomfortable. It was not always kindness. Many times it was fear, fear of rejection, fear of criticism, fear that someone might think less of you if you stopped giving them everything they wanted. The moment you recognize this, you realize that excessive friendliness is not just exhausting, it quietly steals your freedom. That is why one of the greatest steps towards self-respect is becoming comfortable with disappointing people when protecting your own peace requires it. Most people who are too friendly make one critical mistake. They believe that every uncomfortable emotion belongs to them. If someone feels disappointed, they immediately assume they must fix it. If someone becomes upset because they refused a request, they begin feeling guilty. If someone reacts with anger after hearing the word no, they rush to change their decision simply to restore harmony. Over time, they become emotional caretakers for everyone around them while completely neglecting themselves. Their entire life becomes organized around avoiding other people's disappointment. But this creates an impossible situation because no matter how hard you try, there will always be someone who wants more of your time, more of your energy, and more of your attention than you can realistically give. This is exactly why people who are too friendly often become emotionally exhausted. They are not tired because they are kind. They are tired because they have confused kindness with obligation. Every request feels like a responsibility. Every favor feels mandatory. Every invitation feels impossible to decline. Instead of asking themselves, is this good for me? They ask, will this upset someone if I refuse? That single habit quietly transfers control of your life into other people's hands. Your calendar no longer belongs to you. Your priorities no longer belong to you. Even your emotional state begins depending on whether everyone else is satisfied. This is not generosity. It is emotional dependence disguised as friendliness. The people who naturally command respect understand something that overly friendly individuals struggle to accept. Disappointing someone does not automatically mean you have done something wrong. Sometimes disappointment is simply the natural consequence of protecting your boundaries. Imagine someone asking for your time when you have important responsibilities of your own. If you politely refuse, they may feel disappointed. That feeling belongs to them, not to you. It does not make you selfish, it makes you honest. The moment you begin carrying responsibility for every emotion other people experience, you create a burden that no human being can sustain. Notice how manipulative people react when your boundaries become stronger. They often do not attack your decision directly. Instead, they attack your emotions. They call you selfish for protecting your time. They accuse you of changing because you no longer agree with everything they ask. They remind you of everything they have supposedly done for you. Their goal is simple. They want guilt to accomplish what respect no longer can. This is why learning to tolerate temporary disappointment is one of the strongest psychological defenses you can develop. The moment guilt stops controlling your decisions, manipulation begins losing its power. There is another reason you must stop being too friendly. Excessive friendliness attracts people who mistake generosity for unlimited access. As long as you keep saying yes, they remain comfortable. The moment you finally choose yourself, they suddenly become offended. But ask yourself an important question. Did they value you, or did they value your inability to refuse them? Genuine relationships survive healthy boundaries because they are built on mutual respect. One-sided relationships often collapse the moment endless availability disappears. As painful as that realization can be, it also brings clarity. It shows you who truly appreciates you and who simply appreciated what they could receive from you. Learning to disappoint people also changes your relationship with yourself. For the first time, you stop measuring your worth by how useful you are to everyone else. Instead, you begin measuring it by how honestly you live according to your values. You stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You stop feeling guilty for needing rest. You stop believing that every request deserves an automatic yes. Instead of reacting from fear, you begin responding from intention. Every decision becomes more thoughtful because it is no longer driven by the desperate need to keep everyone comfortable. Ironically, this shift often increases the respect people have for you. When your yes is no longer automatic, it becomes meaningful. When your help is no longer guaranteed, it becomes appreciated. When your time is protected, people begin recognizing that it has value. They understand that your kindness is a conscious choice rather than an endless resource they can consume without thought. This changes the entire dynamic of your relationships. Instead of being someone who is always available, you become someone whose presence is genuinely valued. The strongest people are not those who never disappoint anyone. Such people do not exist. The strongest people are those who can remain respectful while accepting that not every decision will make everyone happy. They understand that maturity is not measured by how many people approve of you. It is measured by your ability to remain faithful to your principles even when approval disappears. They refuse to sacrifice their peace simply to avoid temporary discomfort because they know that a life built on constant people-pleasing eventually becomes a life that no longer belongs to them. Because the moment you become comfortable disappointing others for the right reasons, you stop living for their approval and finally begin living with genuine self-respect. After learning to stop chasing approval, protecting your boundaries, refusing to over-explain yourself, allowing people to earn access to your life, and becoming comfortable disappointing others, there is one final lesson that brings everything together. It is replacing the desire to be liked with the desire to be respected. Most people spend years believing these two things are the same, but they are completely different. Someone can like you because you always agree with them, always help them, and never challenge them. Yet that same person may still fail to respect you. Respect is not created by constant agreement or endless friendliness. It is earned through consistency, self-control, clear boundaries, and the quiet confidence to remain true to your principles even when others disagree. If you truly want to stop being too friendly, you must stop measuring your success by how many people like you and start measuring it by the quality of the respect you build. Being liked is often temporary because it depends on circumstances. People like you when you make life easier for them. They like you when you solve their problems, support their opinions, or give them what they want. But the moment you begin protecting your time or saying no, those feelings can disappear surprisingly fast. This is why approval is such an unstable foundation for your identity. It changes with people's moods, expectations, and personal interests. If your confidence depends on something that constantly changes, your emotional stability will constantly change as well. You will spend your life adjusting your personality to fit every new situation, hoping to avoid rejection. In the process, you slowly lose the very thing that makes you unique. Respect follows a completely different path. Respect is built when people know that your behavior is guided by values rather than convenience. They understand that your decisions cannot be bought with praise or changed through guilt. They recognize that your kindness is genuine but not unlimited. They know that when you make a commitment, you honor it, and when you establish a boundary, you protect it without anger or apology. Even those who disagree with you begin recognizing a quality that cannot be ignored. They see someone who values integrity more than popularity. That kind of character creates influence that lasts far longer than temporary approval. One of the greatest mistakes overly friendly people make is believing they must constantly prove they are good people. They volunteer for every task, offer help before anyone asks, and sacrifice their own needs simply to maintain an image of kindness. But truly confident people never feel the need to advertise their character. They allow their actions over time to reveal who they are. They understand that genuine goodness is not measured by how often you say yes. It is measured by whether your kindness remains sincere, balanced, and freely chosen, rather than driven by fear. The more secure you become in your own character, the less you feel the need to convince everyone else of it. There is also a psychological reason why respect creates stronger relationships than approval. Relationships based only on pleasing others become fragile because they depend on constant performance. The moment you stop giving people exactly what they expect, disappointment appears. But relationships built on mutual respect are much stronger. Both people understand that boundaries exist. Both recognize each other's individuality. Both accept that disagreement is part of any healthy connection. Instead of demanding constant agreement, they value honesty. Instead of expecting endless availability, they appreciate genuine presence. These relationships survive because they are built on truth rather than convenience. Notice how people with quiet confidence behave. They are rarely the loudest individuals in the room. They do not constantly seek attention or approval. They listen carefully, speak with purpose, and keep their promises. They are kind without becoming overly familiar. They are generous without allowing themselves to be taken for granted. They do not fear standing alone when their principles require it. Their confidence comes from knowing who they are, not from counting how many people agree with them.